In many ways we're social human beings, but somehow we tend to see consistency and focus as almost anti being social. As if you will have to focus on yourself to get things done that you want to achieve, which is completely the opposite of what it means to achieve bigger success.
Russell Potter here, Motivo Academy, and in this video you are going to learn from a young global CEO at just 39 years old. He's a young global CEO of a recruitment business, one of the biggest in Asia, and he's going to teach us all about his formula for winning, motivating teams, how he selects people for those teams, how he organizes them for success, and all of his tips for winning. At just 39 years old, he's a young global business leader, captain of industry. He's also Moroccan, and he's going to tell us a little bit about the success formula for the Moroccan World Cup football team 2022, who did a great job to break through their group, beating some of the best teams in the world in Spain and Belgium. And he's going to teach us some lessons in leadership that you can learn too. So if you are an entrepreneur, you want to start a business, you manage a team already, or you want to manage a team, watch this video. You're going to learn from one of the best. Good friend of mine, Mr. Adil Driouech. Let's get into it. So tell us a little bit about winning. You're a successful person, as we said, group managing director, 12 countries. I know you're doing really well in your business at the moment. You've had a very successful career. What is winning to you? And what would be your tips for anyone watching this podcast that you would share about winning, your top tips?
Well, I mean, it's really hard to define winning or generalize it, right? I mean, each person has their own dreams, goals, and winning to me might be different to winning to you. But I think it starts with the intentions. I mean, you have to be intentional if you want to win. You can't just aspire to win without being intentional, focused, and consistent. It could be a small, bigger goal, regardless of the size and the shape. You will have to know, what are you trying to achieve? What's that goal, as small as it may be, as big as it may be? Stay focused on that, and then just be very consistent. And if that constitutes, the meaning of winning to you, then that's good for you. And I don't think we should generalize what winning means to everybody. In my position, we've got the different meanings and timelines and shapes of winning. Small wins that happens fairly quick, maybe on a weekly basis, and there are big wins that will take years to come. But I think from my own humble experience, I think winning, as you define it, comes with real consistency of doing whatever that you need to do. Very focused, very consistent, and you don't let it go until you get there. And if you don't get there, you go back and assess why. But as simple as that, the consistency and the focus really gets you much more than just maybe a temporary happiness. It gets you to a much bigger meaning and goals that you would like to achieve.
What are the things that you think are important for being consistent at? Because this is one of the things that I think a lot of people observe, is that they see interviews with very successful people, especially the billionaires of the world, these very famous, successful people. And then they give advice like, set a goal or be consistent. And you can clearly see there's a lot more to it than that. There are some things that they have done that they may not be aware of, actually, to be fair. There's some things that they've done, maybe some motivators that they've had that really drives them, and there is a secret sauce to how they've become very successful. Drilling down a little bit past goal setting and being consistent, what else are the other things that people should really focus on, and what has helped you to become very successful yourself?
Well, I mean, your environment, right? The people around you, where you are when you are. Again, it depends on how you define success. Really, if it is at a bigger scale, it means that, beyond the consistency and the focus, you need, more people to help you get there. And I think that environment, whether it's your family, it's your workplace, it's your friends, whatever that may be, depending on what goal you set for yourself, is extremely important. And somehow, in many ways, we're social human beings, but somehow we tend to see consistency and focus as almost anti being social. As if you will have to focus on yourself to get things done that you want to achieve, which is completely the opposite of what it means to achieve bigger success. Is you need more people, more stakeholders, and just being good with people and being intentional about what you want and having them understand where you want to go and where you want to be is a big aspect of you moving up or onwards, really. But it doesn't mean that everybody will have to be on the same page, and that's where you have your own personality of sharing with people what you want to achieve, and sometimes regardless of whether people agree or disagree with you, and that is personality. You'll have to have your own personality that shows up in everything that you say and you want to achieve, and some will come along and some won't come along, and that's just life. Move on. And I think people get stuck in the emotions of the moments of whether people like me, see me, feel me. And well, that's what I call, well, you got to stay focused on what you want to achieve, not focus on other people's view about yourself. There's a fine line, actually. When you want to achieve bigger things, by default, you will have to engage more people in your life. And for a lot of people that a lot harder because there's a lot more noise out there of people telling you and giving you their opinions, which is awesome if you are intentional about learning from that. Doesn't mean that you take everything that has been said to you to get to your success. Your own success is your own success. It's different from other people. But to me, to keep it short is being consistent, being focused, and learning how to better engage your environments along the way. And you have to be super intentional about it, is a big way forward.
There's so much in there, isn't there? There's so much to unpack in there, actually. I hear a lot of things that, for example, Ray Dalio has said about surrounding yourself with really smart people, but not necessarily just trusting what people tell you, but not dismissing it as well. Surrounding yourself, I think he said, with intellectual Navy SEALs is one way that he put it. And of course, he can afford to employ those people, clearly. But on the other side, Richard Branson is somebody who also mentioned in, I think, the Virgin Way it was, a few years back now. But he said there is a myth of the entrepreneur toiling away on their own, doing these, these ultra long hours, which is kind of true. They do a lot of long hours, but the idea that they're doing it on their own, as their own endeavor, and it doesn't involve a team and it doesn't involve other people, he said it's just a fantasy. And he said it's just really not true. It's all about the environment. So, as you say, one of the keys to success is about hiring the right people around you to create that environment. And that's absolutely huge. It's actually a big theme and the whole chapter of my book, New Energized You. By the way, if you want to support the channel, then please go and pick up a copy, New Energized You. The link in the description, pick it up on Amazon. Environment is massive. Absolutely massive. And if the way that I like to think about environment is that if you imagine if you're in a very cold environment, you can't help but shiver. It's a physiological reality. And if you're in a very warm environment, a hot environment, you're going to sweat. There's nothing you can do about that physiology. But by the same token, as you've probably seen in a few videos on this channel, The mirror neuron system means that you can't help but reflect the emotions of those around you. So tell us a little bit about how you hire the right people for your environment, how you create that environment, because I know that's been one of your key strengths.
Well, I mean, it is a key aspect of building a team or growing an organization or business and achieving bigger goals, is to have the right team, the right people, the right attitude, the right environments. You know, everybody knows that. Everybody can tell you that at any given moment. But not everybody pays the needed attention and invest the needed time to get the best outcome out of it. And that's just, you can see it, you can feel it. A lot of people talk the talk, but when it comes to actually getting that team, making that right hire, there's very, very little time invested in there, and hence the results tend to be not too surprising. I think I've learned over time, and I've got two main areas I focus on. One is the personality. That person, that person, forget about the business side, the intellectual side, the technical side, the know-how side, is just that human being as a human being. How they speak, what they say, what they talk about, what they like, what they live like. Very basic stuff. But it really tells you much more about the human being himself or herself first, because that's the core. And obviously I am biased. I've got my own views about people and what constitutes a good human being versus what you think is a good human being. There are some universal facts and aspects there, but bottom line is, number one is personality, the attitude. Just that person, would I be able to work with that person as a human being, regardless of how much they know. So you really look it down to those very basic stuff that is somehow neglected during most of the hiring processes, and people focus more on the technical aspects of whether you can get the job done or not. I do focus on that core human aspects first. And second is potential-based hiring. A lot of people talk, especially in recent years, skill sets based hiring, and yeah, you can do that to a large extent, but it really depends on what kind of organization you wanna build as well. For me, it's all about potential. Does that person have the personality? Yes, check. Does that person have the potential? Potential to learn, potential to be better, bigger, faster, the potential which takes you into the future. It has almost nothing to do with the past.
It's very interesting to hear you say that, actually. This is something I've heard from a lot of executives as an executive coach, and they're speaking to executives about how they select people. A lot of people say, executives say, it's about character, it's about potential, as you say, also about whether their values fit the culture of the team and the organization or that particular division as well. And it's kind of an interesting observation that a lot of recruitment these days that's done in-house by HR teams who do their very best but ultimately they are bureaucracies. And as bureaucracies, they screen based on obviously pre-existing, characteristics of, or skill sets rather of, the people that they're trying to bring into the company. And that's natural, and to a degree there's a legal element to that as well about discrimination and so on. It is what it is. But one thing I think I observe over the years, and I did human resources in-house for 10 years as a management consultant for another 15 years. And one thing I've noticed is the removal of potential, the removal of unproven, if you like, potential from the hiring process. Is that your observation as well? And what can companies do, and hiring managers and especially HR teams do, to put potential back in? And how can you even measure it as well?
Well, I mean, it has to be a culture within the organization, because the risk of hiring based on potential versus hiring based on known skill sets is a lot higher. And it takes a lot of, a very different culture within the organization that is accepting of you not knowing yet but believing in you, knowing soon, and the ability to learn fast. And that's just a culture within the organization. And, I get it. Not all organizations are set up to work that way. Some, organizations with some pressing business needs, they need skill sets now and then, and that is totally okay. But we're talking about the next 100 years, the next 200 years of a business lifetime, and it takes a lot more than just skill sets. It takes more so the potential of the next generation, and you can't hire based on skill sets and look forward to potential. You'll have to be, again, intentional about balancing what you need now and today based on a specific skill set, because you need it, and that's it. You need it, you need to have it, and it is what it is. But at the same time, being intentional about hiring based on potential, because that's what the future needs.
Absolutely, and I think that's it ties in very well with a report that was done not so long ago that showed that CEOs who have an MBA are actually not as successful as one would think. That it seemed that armed with an MBA, they were very able to cut costs very easily. It's clearly what they teach. But the ability to grow a business was exceptionally rare in the cohort that they studied of CEO executives. And that ability to think creatively, to go tap into new markets, to expand market share, to grow a business seems to be becoming increasingly rare. Whereas, as the report suggested, and it certainly would be my observation as well, most CEOs immediately go to cost cutting to deliver the earnings, obviously, for the earnings per share or whatever analysts are expecting. So it's a very keen observation. A lot of the people who are watching this podcast now are maybe new managers or want to be a manager, and or are thinking about taking that step up, I should say, to managing much bigger teams through multiple layers. Let's just fast forward to where you're at now, managing 12 countries, 400 people. I know you travel a huge amount. How many places have you traveled to in the past 1 month?
7, 8.
Clocking up some air miles.
I don't keep count of that. But yeah, it's a lot of travel.
So how do you maintain that growth in the business? How do you maintain performance? How do you manage a business of that size and complexity? What's your tips?
Well, I mean, having a clear vision to the business that is well understood across the board is a primary thing to do, and for that you will have to be aligned with the headquarters and what the company wants to achieve in the next 5-10 years. And we've got a mid-long-term vision, so that's very clear. I just need to make sure that everybody understands that. And I think number 2 that I've been busy with is trying to get the best team in place that can then deliver on that. And if you trust the potential and you hire people based on personalities and potential, you will need to give them autonomy. And I think those 3 things are very simple to do, to be honest with you. Have clarity on what the business wants to achieve, hire people based on personalities and potential, and they are aligned with what the business wants to achieve, so everybody is on the same page, and have them autonomy and help them when needed, and not micromanaging them. But at a certain level, I hire MDs, so if I am going to hire an MD and micromanage them, then that's totally the wrong business to be at. I think if you can do those 3 things and be very transparent, direct with what you need, everybody understands at any given moments the expectations, but at the same time, they know they can get your help where needed, then that builds a lot of trust. And I think if you can get those things in place, the rest will be history. And I think the other aspects, and people take jobs and they overthink it. A job is a job, and you'll have to have that risk appetite in taking senior jobs. And if you take a job that you think that you'll never lose it, then that's just a fantasy. And it is okay. It is okay to to fail. It is okay to disagree with few people, and it is okay to let go when it doesn't align with how you do your work. It's just okay. But for whatever reason, with human beings, I think we've got a lot more insecurities than we should. And I always say this to people: a job is a job. Do it as well as best as you can. But that's about it. It is not your own business. You don't own it. You are an employee, and you are paid to do a good job and grow business. But that's it. Don't overthink it. If it works, perfect, and you benefit the rest of the people that you have, that is the goal, and that's awesome. And if it doesn't align with how you do things and your own way of running the business, then that's okay, and life moves on.
It's interesting, isn't it, that if you remove the stress from the situation, that performance improves exponentially. Again, another theme of the book about managing stress above a certain level. So if it's too low, to motivate yourself, but if it's too high, the importance of bringing that stress level down into a productive zone, as we put into the book. And I made a whole course on stress management because in my many years of training leadership teams, my observation is that the one thing that holds great leaders back from being at their best, because anyone can be at their best and worst on the same day, and that when you drill down a little bit and ask people in training sessions, well, what's the reason that you're at your best this day and you're not at your best this day? It's not, you're not wrong, but what is it? And they will always say the same keyword. It doesn't matter which country I do it in, who it is, what level it's at, it's stress. Every single time. Overwhelming amounts of stress. Now, some people thrive on a bit of stress, it focuses them. Some people need to feel a little bit more. But one thing does seem to stand out, that way too much stress, as you say, getting too close to it, bringing insecurities in that really would push you up to that top level of stress, negatively impacts business performance, without doubt. How do you manage your own stress? How do you all that responsibility, how do you manage your own stress?
You won't believe it, but I really enjoy it every day. I don't know you call this stress. I think it's just too much work. Maybe physical stress because I travel a lot. Well, look, you mentioned something interesting, and if you go and ask somebody today, so are you happy today? They may say yes. Tomorrow, well, not really. I'm a little bit stressed. But to me, those are temporary moments that are essential in any cycle, whether it's business, sports, and what have you. So I pay less attention to temporary emotions simply because I've got, you'll have to have a meaning to what you do, which takes you to a much higher, much bigger picture, and meaning and that purpose of doing what you do beyond how much money you make or beyond what title you have or beyond a lot of temporary things. I just see it as almost like a duty in life is to make sure that the people that we have in the organization thrive, and they become the best version of whatever they want to be. And to me, that's much bigger of a goal, or maybe even a purpose in life, that when you look at moments, temporary moments of failure or stress, it's nothing. If you look at the big picture and it's wow, I want to achieve this and I want to have those 400 or 500 people, just good and achieving things they want to do in life, whatever that may be. That transcends every small little emotional moments in day-to-day business. And that's how I actually, overcome that daily stress, is thinking about that good that we can achieve at a mid-long term versus the temporary moments of happiness and sadness.
Yeah, it's finding the meaning, isn't it, in your work and some purpose as well, keeping that true north, which comes back to goal setting, as you mentioned previously. I think it's important for people to realise that stress is not necessarily bad. Toxic levels of stress over an extended period of time is bad, But there is some evidence to suggest from quite large studies actually that people who reframe stress as helping them to grow as a positive thing live longer, and it's quite significantly longer as well. Whereas people who frame stress as detrimental, negative, deleterious tend to live less long, and apparently significantly less long according to the studies. So how you frame stress is important. But to take it to the philosophical side, if you read Nietzsche or someone who talks about the will to power, he never meant power as in a Machiavellian way, like you should go and just seek more authority. He actually meant you should build up your personal power by seeking out resistance, by seeking out stressful situations. And it kind of goes back to really sporting analogies as well, to go back to the Greeks, about pushing yourself, the only way to self-actualize being physical rather than mental, pushing yourself as far as you can go and doing as much as you can with what you've got. And you can't imagine a 100-meter sprinter or a marathon runner breaking a world record without constantly putting themselves under stress. So that's where obviously the magic happens.
Yeah, I think for whatever reason, well, I can cite a few reasons, but I think throughout history, generations have had different experiences. Our great grandparents' time, it was hard to make a living. It was wartime. It was a different world. And you look at the current generation, and it's a very, very different world. It's a much richer world, a lot easier, more information, and so on and so forth. And the resilience level has shifted dramatically. So I have conversations with people, and I'm just like really surprised. I'm not in my 70s. I'm still in my late 30s, 40s. And when I talk to people that are more or less the same generation, but they have lived in different continents and countries, and I still see a huge gap of, how far people are willing to go to achieve certain goals, simply because where they were born and their environments and how they've been taught about life and struggles and achievements is just vastly different. And I think our job as managers or leaders is to look at that, understand the differences, but bridge between generations and differences and cultures. It isn't about us judging people whether they belong to the same environments I belong to or not, or expecting to be the same. No, it's just to bridge and make the best out of it, given that people are different and they have very different level of resilience appetite and risk-taking appetite. And to bridge that and get the best out of a diverse group is what will make us move forward.
It's a very interesting observation, actually, isn't it, that you bring up the people who lived through the last World War, that they have a certain amount of resilience. And I think back then, of course, you had no choice. Bombs are falling, and catastrophe is happening around you. You don't have choice but to survive. I'm from London, and they talk about the Blitz spirit, and I really think about that. And I don't mean any disrespect to people who lived through the Blitz. But what choice did you have but to live through the Blitz? That's really about coping and surviving. But we live in an incredibly comfortable world at the moment, where there isn't really much motivation to really go that extra, to really motivate yourself, to push yourself. There's no survival needs, if you like. But one thing that I discovered from my book and interviewing a lot of successful entrepreneurs is they all had a very strong avoidant motivator from childhood. And usually it was saving the family with a piggy bank when mum or dad lost their job. That is a really common one that I came across. And then they were touched by a little bit of optimism that gave them some hope that actually, if I do work hard, and I probably can save the family with my piggy bank. And they kind of kept that. And training one of the global retail brands, one of the biggest in the world, their management team in Asia, they'd also reflected what you just mentioned, that some countries, in some countries, people are incredibly grateful for a job, because if they don't have a job, they really will starve to death. They've never had, in some countries, however, to fight for their job. They've never had to fight for their, their bread at the end of the day, to eat at the end of the day. And he said it does very much reflect the character of those people. It's pretty extreme. Did you have anything in your childhood growing up in Morocco that that may have been a strong motivator to you?
Well, I was fortunate to be born in the family I was born in, right? Got parents in academia, got a fairly large family, so not super well off, but in between. Had a good education, early age. But one thing that was maybe was the exception at the time. Whatever good I did at the time, I was the eldest, so eldest out of three. It's never good enough, and you hear that every day. It's like, well, I've done this. Yeah, well, you could do better, and you do better, but you still can do better, and you still can do better. And I think that just got me to always never settle for what I have achieved, because there's always something better. And okay, and different people look at it different ways, and some people say, well, it's too much unnecessary pressure and stress you put. And you say, well, I can't do otherwise. That's how I was brought up. So live with it, and it is what it is. And I think that's one way that got me to always push forward, is probably people will overanalyze it and say, well, you've never seen, other people praising you for doing good. No, thank you. I don't need that. I think it was good for me, works for me, got me to be where I am, just by never telling me that it was good enough. You still can do a little bit more. And I appreciate that. And that was from my dad. And he pushed me hard for, well, all of us really, for 20 plus years. And I don't see that as a bad thing. I just see it as a different way of a father dealing with their kids and try to push them to be a better version of themselves.
As you mentioned earlier on, the importance of environment, and how environment really makes you stronger and it makes you better. And it certainly seems that's been the case. It's long been an observation, certainly from the Gen Z, observation of the Gen Z, if you like, when they were much younger, as I recall it many years ago, that they talked about this laissez-faire parenting style, much more permissive, just you win if you participate kind of thing. And I think there was a balance to the other end of the spectrum. But I think we're seeing now a lot of people coming through into their 30s, late 20s, early 30s, and I don't necessarily see, I think it's an amazing generation, actually, I've got to say quickly, but I don't see necessarily that everybody has that emotional security in the real world to cope when they're not the best. Because just as an observation, and this is a total generalization, which is totally unfair, obviously, but my observation is that when people have come through that laissez-faire parenting style, which is done with great intentions, I've done a little bit of it myself, they've been told they're the best, they're the best, they're the best, maybe at school, definitely at home, but when they go out in the real world, they're not the best, because that's when competition actually hits. There's no faking that in the real world. You either are or you are not. And I can see how people that have been told that really struggle, and I can see they struggle emotionally. And as a coach, I come across this quite a lot, and I hear about this from friends who are counseling psychologists, that they really struggle to cope. They really struggle to deal with things. They try to maybe put down the other person, or say it's their fault or their problem. And I can see that just as an observation of that more laissez-faire parenting style. What's your opinion? Have you observed that, or am I just imagining it?
No, no, it's true. And as I said, different generations, there's different ways of, different theories and styles. And, maybe the next generation will be just very different from what we see now. But it's not real. I mean, it's just extreme. It's one way. Life isn't just one way. You can't keep telling people that you're the best, is good enough to be just there. It's not real. It's not, you go to the Olympics and just be good enough to be there. You're not going to win. And that's just, I I really don't get it. And the way I talk about it, a lot of people will take it, well, you just want to push everybody to be the best version of themselves. Not true, but that's the other extreme. And well, look, none of us is good at getting that balance, but that is clearly a one way of looking at the world, and just making sure that, I think the intentions are always good, because most parents wants to see their kids safe, well, healthy, and so on and so forth. But the how is where there's a lot of psychology in there. And as a father myself, I do push my kids harder than most people in their generation. But at the same time, when they deserve a well done, they get it. But that's not too often, because they've got goals they need to achieve, and they need to work for them. And it takes a lot of hard work, obviously depending on those goals they have. And it takes a lot of, just hours and time invested, and emotions, and so on and so forth. And to ignore all of that and say, well, it's good enough to just be in the swimming pool. No, it is not good enough. And my daughter is funny. She's my eldest. I ask her, so she's a swimmer, and she does train every day, twice a day. It's pretty hardcore. And I ask her, like, so do you enjoy your training? No, but I have to do it if I want to go to the Olympics. For me, that works.
She's found a purpose, just like her dad. But I couldn't agree more. I think just keeping that standard high, raising the bar, and putting yourself in stretch, putting yourself in challenge, is really honoring, being human. I think we're very privileged to be given a life, and I think you have to honor that, and really, with everything you have, do the most that you can with it. And I think that's not necessarily about achieving things outside of our physical realm. It's actually doing the most with our physical realm. And again, going back to Nietzsche, finding areas of resistance and setting a goal and pushing through that, learning and then setting another goal and pushing through that as well. It's an achievement doesn't necessarily mean owning a Lamborghini. It can just be doing a little bit more, your personal best in whatever it is, whatever endeavor it is, going that little bit more. And I think if people were a lot stronger mentally, generally, I think we could solve a lot of humanity's problems. But moving on, because I'm aware that your time is certainly money, for sure. Last couple of questions that I got for you. One is a message for anyone who wants to be a manager, first time, or they're a junior manager now, they want to manage a bigger team. What's your advice for getting into management at the entry level?
Well, I mean, you'll have to talk to yourself and see, like, the big question is why. When I still remember back in the days when I asked myself, didn't have really a lot of answers to that, but it came that I realized that I just enjoyed more working with people, around people, rather than doing the job by myself. And as simple as it may be, that gave me a hint to move into more management and then leadership later on. But at least I had a discussion with myself, So I was intentional about trying to answer the question of why would I want to move and be a manager versus just stay as an individual contributor. So I think that's really the beginning of this. And then, well, what's the purpose? If I am a manager, what's the reason? Is it just to feel good about myself? Maybe that's good enough reason for you. It's not for me. But my purpose at that time wasn't clear. It was like just to do bigger things. It was more individual, to raise, in the organization and be more senior and have more people and very, very superficial way of looking at it. But when I started managing people, I really enjoyed it, and I enjoyed seeing people just doing well for whatever reason. There was no tangibles there. It's a feeling. I feel like, wow, this person actually can do this and this and that, and if I can help a little bit, push a little bit, then they can be better. And that was just a great feeling that I never wanted to let go. And that was my driver. And I think having that conversation with yourself, answering the question of why you want to move into a manager role versus not, and what's the purpose of that, when you want to achieve out of that, is a big step forward. And number two is having that discussion with your supervisors and making it clear that that's your goal for the reasons that you have thought about, and that's what you want to achieve. And I think if you can do those two things, you will get there, simply because if you are convinced that that's the right path for you, you are more open and willing to learn fast and be transparent toward your environments about what you want to achieve. So there's a lot of transparency which builds a trust over time, which you will always need while you are in a management position. It cannot be just for how good you are or how much you know, is how much more or little people trust you does impact that initial journey of you being a manager. I think if you do those few things and learn along the way, there's nothing that can stop you, really.
Bad intention, as you mentioned earlier on, having that why, having that purpose, having a reason for it. I actually think that leaders, if they want to be a leader, should do it because they want to serve, others. And then I think what we've learned in this interview today with you is that serving others, finding people with potential, helping them to develop that potential is something that's really served you very well. Last two questions. Obviously, New Energized You, my book. Don't forget to pick it up, everybody. How do you manage your energy? How do you maintain such a high energy level for such a long time without burning out? Or do you burn out now and again? And then how do you cope?
I actually have no idea. I've been the same for so many years, and I don't think I have time to think about it, and go dive in depth and analyze why. But I can only assume, and I think two major things. One is, I just have a purpose, for doing what I do. I don't do stuff just for the sake of doing it. I don't get a job just for the sake of a title or a salary. I don't, lead or manage people just for the sake of you looking at me and me feeling good about how I look. I don't do that. It's a much bigger purpose there. It has a meaning to me, and that meaning is much, much, much deeper than anything you can buy. And if you come and pay me like 3 times today and tell me to do a job that I won't be happy to do it, but just for the sake of tripling my salary, I won't do it. Really, as simple as that. So that's, for me, is very, very clear that I've got a meaning into what I do, and it has to be much bigger, much, much bigger than a salary or a title or a position or a geography. So that's, for me, very clear. And it keeps me always hustling for a much higher purpose. And I don't really care whether people see it or not. I do care that I stay on track for that higher purpose. I think that's one thing. Energy is very much related to emotions, and day to day, the happy moments or sad moments, I intentionally think about them as temporary emotions. They're not gonna, constitute my entire life. They are just short moments in a day or a month or a week. But, you move on because there's a much bigger purpose there. And once you have a much bigger purpose, a much higher purpose, the energy that comes with it is much bigger than a small, sad moments in a day.
Final thing, we'll end on a high. You must be very proud of your football team performance, the performance of Morocco at the last World Cup. Leadership lessons from the Morocco team. How on earth did they do that?
Well. I mean, I'll tell you a funny story first. I was coming back from Jakarta, and I went through immigration and handed my passports. And the guy looks at me, he was like, Morocco. And I wasn't part of that team, but I felt so proud, to get that in an airport somewhere in Southeast Asia, right? Never underestimates the underdog, right? I mean, they went to the World Cup, and everybody was, well, it's going to be Croatia and Belgium. Morocco, as usual, they will go and play, just be part of it. But I think the biggest shift that was there, and that's a masterclass leadership. The coach, the first thing he works on, it was like, and I've seen this in many of his interviews, it was like when he was selecting the players and he was talking to them to come to play in the World Cup, he said, well, if you're going to come here with the mindset, I'm just going to come for 2 or 3 games and be in the World Cup and we will just try our best, and it's going to be fine, don't. If you're going to come to win, come. And he will have to have that mindset. And I think he made that message clear. Plus, he didn't stop there. He builds confidence. It's not like just some positive thinking, hey, let's just go and work hard and we're going to get there. That's not good enough for him. I think what he added is that confidence is him being there, understanding the mindsets, encouraging them and making sure that he had a good game plan as well. So it's not just, the emotional aspects. It was a straightforward discussion, setting the expectations of why we are here. That's number one. And I think number 2 is he works on building that confidence at a group level. I mean, he's the coach, he's the leader. And number 3, he has just a good game plan.
Certainly some great leadership lessons there, definitely about that belief and that intention, once again, that we're here to win. It's so common, isn't it, for smaller teams to just think, well, we'll turn up, we've done well to get here, right? We'll just give it a good go. And it kind of goes back to that parenting style, doesn't it, really, that we mentioned earlier on about, turning up is good enough and just doing your best is good enough. But achievers have the intention of winning, and they believe it can be done. And I think that's one of the things we learned from the last World Cup, not just with Morocco, but also with Japan also, that actually, if you hang on in there, you will get your chance eventually. And in a 90-minute match, maybe with extra time, anything can happen. Adil, it's been an absolute pleasure. And thank you very much for your time. If you enjoyed this conversation, please subscribe to the channel. That's how you can support us. Pick up a copy of the book, New Energized You. It's got a lot of the things we talked about today in the book. That will help to support the channel. Link in the description below. Adil, thank you very much. Any final word?
No, just, thank you so much for the time. I really hope people can pick 1 or 2 things from this discussion. And again and again and again and again, whatever you do in life, just think about it, be intentional about the outcomes you want to reach, and you will be just fine. Thanks, Russell.
Over to you.